Thank you, Banu Hocam. Do you hear me, by the way? I'm not sure if I'm audible or not. All good? Perfect. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our 103rd talk of Mekan Konuşmaları. We're pleased to host Professor Tarık Şengül, who will be talking about Istanbul Marmara's earthquake and resilience towards a multi-layered and multi-dimensional, multi-scalar, multi-actor definition and strategy. Professor Tarık completed his undergraduate studies at Middle East Technical University and the City Planning Department, and his graduate studies from the same institution, Political Science Department. He completed his PhD thesis, Hegemony and Urban Space, the case of the Turkish capital Ankara at Kent University's Urban Studies program in the United Kingdom. He's currently the department coordinator and lecturer at Middle East Technical University, Political Study and Political Administration Department, also offering courses in the same institute, Middle East Technical University, Urban Policy Planning and Local Governments Department. In addition to his national and international scholar articles, he has published 2 books in Turkish, and he has assumed the position as the chairman of the Chamber of the City Planners from 2008 to 2010, and the City of Diyarbakir Structural Plan Department coordinator from 2004 to 2005. Lately, he has been working as a coordinator for Istanbul Municipality 2050 Vision Action Plan and Istanbul Seismology Supreme Board. Thank you so much, Professor Tarık, for joining us, and the stage is all yours.
Okay. So what I'm gonna, do tonight, actually, rather than presenting a, somehow integrated, paper on earthquake and resilience in Istanbul, rather, I would like to show how difficult it is. Yeah, rather than, because I'm not quite sure really, we could have some sort of hugely, successful and integrated strategy, because, we have a complexity, and this complexity has got, various dimensions, and, being aware of that and then working on that complexity is the thing we should be doing, really, because that will increase the, some sort of comprehensive, a chance for a comprehensive approach, integrated approach towards the, creation of a resilient Istanbul vis-a-vis the earthquake or other disasters. So, we know that Istanbul is a very complex metropolitan area. Such an urban monster. So Ferdinand Brüder calls it in the 19th century, for the 19th century, he says that Istanbul is an urban monster. So that means actually, if we postmodernize that urban monster, that means actually it's a very complexity with, really multi-layered, multiplied, multi-level, multi-dimensional problems, actors, scales, layers, whatever you say. So we should be aware of the, really complexity when we somehow picture Istanbul as a, some sort of earthquake expecting city or metropolitan area. So add that complexity, the, dimension of earthquake itself, because it's not simply we are talking about an earthquake in Istanbul, but also in Marmara region. So it goes beyond, Istanbul as well, from a geographical point of view. So for this reason, I'm gonna, focus on this complexity in different fronts by focusing on the earthquake, rather than trying to provide you with some sort of integrated, really strategy. In the end, we all would love to have it in that way, but rather than doing that, I'm gonna do tonight, at least 3-4, complexities, interrelated complexities Istanbul has to face if it would have some sort of consistent strategy on the front of earthquake. So let's, see what I mean by that. So one thing, I mean, when we look at the earthquake, I mean, we are talking about some sort of disaster, a situation, some sort of emergency or a crisis. But when we look at from that point of view, when we are studying this, disaster dimension in Istanbul, so I'm a city planner with a political science orientation and some, sort of engagement with the sociology, then, for me, it was inevitable to realize the fact that actually, there are other crises as well. So I'm not saying this to just tell that, okay, this is only one problem for Istanbul, but there are other problems. No, not for that. Just I'm looking from the earthquake point of view, and then I see various, really crises Istanbul or other mega cities has to confront. So, I mean, here in the case of Istanbul, I'm working on a, Vision 2050 action plan. So our starting point was that, actually we have to, position Istanbul vis-a-vis these, at least 6 crises. So these are ecological crises, and perhaps, we can relate these disasters and particularly earthquake in relation to this ecological, somehow position of the city and the region, because this is a region with some sort of huge, fault lines, which threatens the city in the past and in the future. But on top of that, we have also this huge problem of economic and financial crisis. I mean, for everywhere, but especially for Istanbul. That's I mean, I will tell you why this is really so critical for Istanbul. So I'm not gonna go through all these crises, but also we really identified the urban crisis as well. For instance, crisis of housing, which is really a substantial problem now in everywhere. But for mega cities, it is a unique problem in certain respects, because when you say, for instance, housing market for Istanbul is not for only those who lives in Istanbul. I mean, there is a huge investment coming from all over the world, especially from the Middle East, from Russia, from other geographies. People buy houses in Istanbul, and it pushed the housing prices even further for Istanbul, and also costs increasing because we are living in an inflationary country. But you can add other crises, crisis of welfare, crisis of border, and in return, I mean, all these, emergencies and, state of exception situations, creates an environment where quite easily democracy and the, really some sort of accountable form of governance in a way somehow by showing this emergency situation usually sidelined in favor of rapid decision making, in favor of really state of emergency, etc. So we give up democracy quite easily. For instance, central government says that look, this is the matter of state. So, it's a kind of critical issue. You just, don't tell anything as the local authority, as in the case of Channel Istanbul. So central government told the municipality to shut up. So therefore, I mean, we compromise democracy in the face of this exceptional situation. So I'm not saying that we don't have only, earthquake problem, but we have other problems too. No. But let me tell you why these are important. While metropolitan municipality, let's assume that we are trying to create a somehow more resilient microform for Istanbul. So some experts, some civil engineers told us that we have to just move the city to the north. I said, are you crazy? I mean, if you push the city to the north, so you are actually pushing the city towards an ecological disaster. Okay, you may move the people away from the fault lines, but if you really push the city to the north, so you create some sort of ecological disaster for the city, because those are the water basins, these are the really forests, etc. So I mean, if you take the Istanbul to Black Sea area, its city becomes sort of safer, earthquake-wise. But then you create an ecological disaster. And then, we have to, now demolish at least 90,000 units, building units, not the units of housing. I mean, it's even, just multiplied with the 6 or 7. So when you demolish those houses, okay, that would be a safe city, safer at least, because they are really not resilient. So they are really prone to some sort of collapse in a very, around 6 point something, not even 7. You need to, really lose those houses. So, okay, let's see. But in the last 2 years, housing prices tripled. So our friends in the related departments working on these urban transformation projects, they don't know what to do in that sense, because the number of houses and buildings requiring some sort of complete demolition and re-erection, and it means not strengthening simply, but redevelopment, requires a huge budget, because this is some sort of also a financial situation, and in the financial front we live at some sort of crisis as well. So we turn to land, available land, safe land. So there we meet ecological crisis. Then if we turn to redevelopment in the very same place or in somewhere else, then we meet the economic crisis. And I'm not going beyond that, telling you, I mean, welfare crisis, because, if you ask the contribution of the families to that cost, many of those families really try to, in a way, survive in the city, let alone, allocate some money to housing. So what I'm now telling you with this picture, actually, when you talk about a particular, disaster or crisis, like the earthquake, actually, you have to take into account all the other crises. Without paying attention to them, one of my colleagues, I mean, a civil engineer professor, actually, told the media that, city should move to north. He's a civil engineer. He wouldn't do it, if he was a, some sort of city planner or ecologist. But because he, civil engineer, he looks at the buildings, really safety in terms of, the geological structure. So he see the radical solution, pushing the city to north. So how about other disasters? inviting them. So this is one of the dimension. I mean, this is a kind of world. We are not really facing the challenge of a single disaster or single crisis. This is intersectional. This is intersecting, crisis of cities. And you can't ignore any crisis. So this is city, and as I said here, multidimensional crisis or intersecting crisis. I mean, this very same, multiplicity of the, crisis in different areas. So if I come, to the second, issue I would like to raise in terms of complexity. So when we meet with the experts, so they have this tendency, again, simplification and one-dimensional, solutions is the, in a way, starting point. So you meet civil engineers, as I said, they look at the, in a way, the engineering aspects, and particularly, really the strength of the buildings, etc. But then even the engineering dimension involves various engineering. For instance, along with civil engineers, there is this geological engineers. And, if you meet geological engineers, between these geological things, some of them geodesy, some of them, geoengineers, etc. They disagree with them. They don't like each other. Sometimes they hate each other, honestly. And we just pushed the, environmental engineers by force into the group, in a way, as a part of that engineering process. But then there are other groups. For instance, urban planning and architectural dimension. So this is one of the dimensions I'm sure you are very sensitive, is that important, issue in developing a resilient approach. So, I mean, we have a second group, planners and architects, and that, architects and planners, sometimes they love each other, sometimes, they have these big disagreements, etc. But there is this internal tension within this group as well. But also we have logistic dimension. So for Istanbul now, we are working on a logistic plan for Istanbul, I mean, involving, all these, different aspects. So before the earthquake, during and after, all these logistic, activities, some sort of arrangements are quite central and important to save the people and other living, species from the disaster. So in a way, so we work with the logistic experts, especially industrial engineers are, really very adamant on that. They are really very well experienced, etc. So there are other, dimensions now. We have 7 different, really groups in the scientific committee of the, earthquake resilience, really study in Istanbul. So logistic, engineering, urbanization and architectural dimension. Also, we have this social dimension. So this involves preparing the society, especially at the neighborhood level. So preparedness and societal preparedness requires a approach, not simply in terms of, educating people, but at the same time making them active in terms of, contributing to the, various, work on earthquake. For instance, local knowledge is so important. So that's another dimension. So health dimension, you can imagine, I mean, involves the hospitals, doctors and other health staff to be ready for earthquake at different stages. So that's, close connected to logistic activities, but you know, in Istanbul, for instance, recently, you know, central government itself, Ministry of Health itself declared that, you know, some of the hospitals are prone to, you know, earthquake, and they're closing down. Those they already closed a couple of them, and some of them, you know, is going to be, you know, closed in the recent future. So we prepared some sort of report on that. You know, how would that affect the, you know, resilient, you know, Istanbul approach from our point of view? How could we, you know, really cope with this, you know, hospitals' own situation, etc. So there is a report prepared and on the website of the Istanbul Planning Agents. But also we have this economic dimension. So here we are dealing with the economic costs of the earthquake. Both, you know, if what happens really, I mean, for instance, we worked on the Kahramanmaraş region, on that 11 city, and then almost $110 billion is the, you know, identified material cost. I mean, just, you know, financial costs of the earthquake. So for Istanbul, we are trying to do that, but it's not that easy. I mean, for instance, you know, in terms of buildings, in terms of, you know, housing units, etc., it's relatively easy to identify the potential cost. But if you come to, for instance, industrial, productive, you know, buildings, etc., we don't know what is in those buildings. I mean, the machinery and other equipments, etc. We don't know the, you know, really the value of those, you know, investments. So, but we are working on that. But it is important to show, you know, for this could look a little bit more, you know, very materialistic, you know, calculation, but it's not. I mean, we try to show that, look, if you do something, you solve this problem with this amount of, you know, finance. But if you don't, I mean, you create such a damage that, you know, all Turkish economy could not maybe recover from that, you know, really disaster. If you don't do, you know, if you don't get the city ready for this earthquake with its industrial and other economic, you know, really values, so you may create such an earthquake that, you know, you may not later on recover from that, because it will be such a, you know, exponential, you know, really costs ensue the, you know, this neglect in a way. So, but finally, there is this governance dimension. Getting prepared to this situation requires, because that is a multi-level governance system with what, you know, earthquake, you know, resilience requires. But again, so this second dimension, what I'm trying to tell you that, you know, actually, when you say get, you know, resilient city, at least there are 7 dimensions to get prepared for the earthquake by creating a resilient city. It's not simply about buildings. It's not simply about, you know, really logistics. It's not simply about health services, etc. But the complexity here again, you know, really emerged, you know, and multidimensional, you know, approach is necessary to face this earthquake reality if we claim some sort of resilient, you know, really city in the face of earthquake. So this is the second dimension. Thirdly, I mean, you know, if we come to this governance and law, these kind of issues. So here is the, you know, picture. I mean, I try to, you know, somehow draw a diagram on the, you know, really levels of government and scales of government. So here, at least I identified 12 stages with 6, you know, levels. So let's say that, metropolitan level or regional level is the, place where earthquake takes place. If you remember that this is also a Marmara earthquake. So here we have, 6 scales. We have to get prepared for an earthquake. So in the first place, if you look at the metropolitan level,
Jim, I think Professor Tarık wrote it.
Yeah, there's a connection problem again.
Yeah, let's wait for a couple of seconds.
Sorry?
Yeah, he's back.
So there was a problem.
Okay. So, I mean, here, the first dimension is to create some sort of division of labor and somehow, get rid of those conflicts as much as possible between the central government and local authority. So this is one. This requires us to, somehow look at all these law and regulations, allocating, the responsibilities, providing, some sort of legal framework for the division of labor, etc. That needs to be revised in substantial ways. So, second dimension requires some sort of, working together with the field organizations of the central government and the local authorities. So this is different from the division of labor. But in the actual, field, for instance, you have to work with the Ministry of Health staff or AFAD staff. So they are all, there in a disaster. So that's the second dimension. That also need to be, in a way, require some sort of, design how to work together in such a disaster. So, but at the moment, there is little, really communication between these levels. But thirdly, there are these global networks at different level. I mean, somehow remember the Marmara earthquake. I mean, many, global city networks or municipalities from abroad or, institutions at the international level were in the region providing, some sort of aid and material, but created also a conflict there as well. Even the reception process of those, aid and the material, etc., created some sort of tension. So that requires some sort of also, afterwards, these financial resources, credits, loans, etc., to rebuild these areas require some sort of global logic, involving both central government and the local authorities to arrange that kind of cooperation or transactions. So the fifth, dimension is about the self-organization of Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality. Here, so I provided the levels, but let me focus on here. So 12 steps. So here I would try to summarize the levels of cooperation and the actors involved. So division of labor between central and local government, working with the field organization of, as I said, cooperation with transnational humanitarian and financial institutions, and working with, other municipalities from and municipal unions, and plus reorganizing the metropolitan municipality in terms of it is architecture, institutional architecture. Because, for instance, the AFAD, type of organizational department in the municipality, ACOM, it is called, was very, a small unit. So now we propose the, decision makers to create a, more staff, more, resourceful, unit. So a new unit is established recently. So the municipal council made a decision to create some sort of directorate for the, this emergency unit. So that institutional architecture is quite important. But plus, municipality itself also now work on the, really actual, responsibilities of the municipality. So identifies the, really step by step, what to do, schemes. So within the logistic plan as well. So then the functions also now reviewed by the municipality. Thirdly, what would be the, participatory, really channels of the municipality? Allowing other institutions penetrate into the municipality, providing the, cooperative, working of this, governance structure at the, during, after, and before the disaster. So that involves a reorganization of the municipality itself. This is the fifth duty in a way. And also, it is worrying that, coordination between metropolitan municipality and district municipalities are quite, really low. Almost many of those municipalities at the district level, they are working independently without that much of, coordination with the metropolitan and with the other district municipalities. That needs to be, also addressed, because they need to be, working together. I mean, especially party difference makes a huge difference here in terms of working together. So that's a sixth dimension, but at the same time, that sixth point to some sort of actor as well, here district municipality. Fifth is the metropolitan municipality. First is the central government. Third one is the, global city networks and global economy. So then we turn to universities as a major partner. So this is a huge problem area as well. I mean, we are all members of the university. I mean, I am a member of it. You are, and we know that the level of cooperation between the municipalities and the universities are quite low. So that requires some sort of reworking. So how can we, really cooperate better to face this problem of disasters and earthquake particularly, to work towards the creation of a resilient city? So universities could play a major role. I mean, but by the way, let me tell you that, so I'm coordinating now this 2050 vision plan, vision action plan. There, actually, we define the universities quasi-local authorities. So, I mean, this is, for some sort of 25 years, time perspective is 25 years. And at the end of this process, at some point, I think we believe that, universities should turn to, quasi-local authorities in their cities. So this needs some other changes as well. But in the end, I mean, we would like to see the universities better integrated into the, really urban, management system of the, cities. So that's another target. So also in this process, citizens should be addressed directly as the 8th dimension. So, for instance, it's not as just receptive thing, but municipality itself, and the citizens who lives in Istanbul, for instance, in any problem, I mean, nobody could tell that, people in the first place should, they turn to the municipality to get information, for instance, because they don't really trust. So you have to establish that trust between the local authority and citizens. So if there is an earthquake, the next moment they should look at the web page of the metropolitan municipality rather than looking, Twitter's, world where all speculative, news and, unhealthy information, just circulates. So, I mean, so we are working in the municipality now to create better, really interactive frameworks, including web page, these applications, etc. So, for instance, people apply to certain schemes like, strengthening of the buildings, etc. So that requires a better integration. A team now, or expert on these issues, working to integrate all these different, web pages, applications, and other, social media, tools to create a simple but accessible at the same time, informative, in a way, channels to create. And then we turn to, the local civil society, 9 and 10. 9 refers to functional local NGOs and chambers and associations. What I mean by this, they are not place-based. For instance, chambers of architects, etc. So Istanbul-wide organizations. And for instance, also chambers of trade and other associations are not place-based. So they are serving nationwide or citywide, to people. So that requires some sort of thing. But also at the same time, we have these place-based organizations. 10th dimension refers to these sub-districts, neighborhoods, muhtarlar, and other, place-based associations and unions, etc. So that's some sort of area cooperation is necessary. At this point, for instance, this minute, we are organizing this scent-based, preparedness schemes for the city. I don't know if you heard MAG, Mahalle Gönüllüleri platformu diye şeyler var. So they are really providing training and education for the local people at the neighborhood level, etc. So we are working with them to create a, vibrant, communities in the face of earthquake, getting them prepared, trained and contributing at all stages of the, earthquake actively, to create a resilient neighborhoods and districts. So here, let me tell you that, in the, again, vision action plan, we have a very specific strategy, and we are really very adamant on that. It is the semtleştirme projesi. So it is a project, actually. So we know that global cities are the cities of, really formal relations, networks, very powerful actors, etc. But daily life itself, could be handled with a different logic. Face-to-face relations, active cooperation of the citizens. I'm not, calling as some sort of traditional community approach. That's not that. I mean, for instance, if you read Dora Massey, you will see that she was really in love with Kilburn, where she was living. I mean, it was some sort of daily life, really environment, a scale for the daily life. So somehow, the action plan propose some sort of vibrant, really community at the semt level. So in Turkey, this neighborhood level, mahalle, and muhtar seems to be, really very, defunct, at the moment. They are there. In some of them, they are okay, but in most of them, they are artificial now. So rather, we turn to semt concept. So otherwise, in Istanbul, I don't know if you know, there are 1,000, neighborhood, muhtarlık exist in Istanbul. So it's difficult to really face such a, really huge number. Rather, we turn to, this cents scale. So there also, we are targeting to create semt assemblies. Yani, this refers to 11th, really dimension, citizens assembly. So it is the place where Kent Konseyleri is the scale. Actually, we would like to, in a way, reactivate and strengthen and create some sort of platform for the local civil society. But then, the proposal in the vision plan is this. We rather want to citizens assemblies constituted by those members coming from the sub-district, semt, otherwise, assemblies. So this is the 11th dimension. And 12th dimension refers to urban built environment itself. So here, I'm referring to built environment, and actants of the city. So rather than, taking them as, some sort of passive elements, so here we are talking about earthquake. Earthquake is about, actually geology of the city. Geology of the city is not simply, some sort of ground, but at the same time, urban built environment. So we have to listen that built environment, work with it together. So I think you somehow had Chris Harman before in your meeting, as far if I am right. I saw what you sent to me. I saw talk given by him. So he's one of those who refers to this kind of non-human actors, etc. So here, built environment for us is a non-human actor, and it requires some sort of close cooperation with the, really built environment. We have to listen to it. It is strengths, it is weaknesses, where we need, open spaces, where we need, for instance, in many places, these open spaces where people could, come together after the earthquake is not anymore there. Either there is a shopping mall or, a gated community, they destroyed that open spaces. So we have to look at them and their, previous situation. We have to listen to the built environment with its strength, with its problems, with its, potentials, etc. So it requires some form of resonance between the, human actants and non-human actant here as the built environment. So that's the kind of, if you look at from that point of view, we have here 6 scales for all those, cooperative activities, but also at least 12 actors and actants to take into account. Again, some sort of complexity in various sense, because here we don't have all these actors ready to cooperate. Okay, let me tell you, for instance, central government prepared for Istanbul quite a few, really some sort of redevelopment plan targeting the earthquake. But unfortunately, out of 22, only 2 of those, redevelopment plan actually targets the earthquake. Others rent-seeking, plans. So how are you gonna cooperate with such a, logic? So, I mean, it is, I'm not saying that, it shouldn't be, but what I am saying, I mean, we need a, some sort of very powerful, pressure to cooperate for different actors, including the municipalities themselves. I'm critical of the municipalities themselves, including the metropolitan municipality in certain respects, even if I work with them. So I have my own criticisms at different level, perhaps to academic circles as well. So for this reason, I mean, it's when I say multi-level governance, multi actor schemes, etc. They are not ready there, expecting some sort of magic framework within which they place them, they get positioned in them, and then work together. It's not like that. So this is a huge complexity, and complexity doesn't result just from the organizational logic. It's a political also issue, to create. So for this reason, what I mean by this, I mean, why I place this multiplicity and complexity at the center of my presentation. I mean, we have to look at these different levels, different dimensions. As I gave the example of crisis and disaster logic. I mean, one disaster requires a certain action, and that action itself actually creates another problem. So this is not simply optimization as well. So we need some sort of approach requiring some form of complexity based understanding of the problems. But at the same time, we need to understand that this is also a political process. We have to pressure different levels of government. We have to create new platforms for the local civil society. They are completely disorganized in many respects. So for this reason, so my main message is this. I mean, this is the resilience for the cities, or creating a resilient city is not once, one dimensional, or one, how could I put this? I mean, this requires us some sort of multi, level, multi-actor, scholar approach, bringing different and conflicting actors together by pushing them to work together. So this is not simply engineering. This is not simply some sort of architectural design. This is not simply a sociological compromise. This is a political process. So therefore, we have to understand this complexity, and we should talk about this complexity and multidimensionality if we, in the end, to reach and create a resilient city. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Tarık, for this wonderful, very detailed, multidimensional presentation. To be honest with you, I was very shocked. But before we jump to the Q&A as well, I would like to introduce our Dean, Şebnem Yılanay Çinici. Professor Şebnem, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Abdullah. Thanks a lot for the introduction. And Professor Tarık Şengül, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and being part of this Mekan Konuşmaları series that our graduate students, in fact, organizes. So it's also very valuable to hear from you in person because at the graduate studio level, we are also trying to work on this post-disaster settlements and how we may deal with the problem, of course, from a different perspective, especially when your talk just trying to perhaps diagnose the many other multidimensional situation of earthquake situation is concerned. So thank you so much, really, for this very valuable lecture and contribution, and making us kind of see the situation from these very multi-leveled and layered perspectives too. So I will wait for the students' questions, and after that, I would like to share some of my questions with you too. So perhaps, Abdullah, you may go ahead with the questions if your friends have some.
Anyone can open their microphone as well and speak if you guys would like to ask your question, or you could write it in the chat as well.
Professor Tarık,
Yes.
thank
yes.
you very much for this presentation. To be honest, I really enjoyed it, and listening to the way you speak about it also makes me actually believe your words and your perspective towards this, let's say, multidimensional crisis, or how can I say it? I mean, it's an issue that we have to figure out, like having a solution that can work in multi-levels and at the same time be ecological while not destroying the context of the area or the ecological system of where it is quite hard. And I really agree with you with this point. But I do believe that I mean, there is some stuff that we can take action upon and do as citizens, but at a certain limit, probably we can't act upon things like politics and geopolitics or municipality rules and I don't know, orders and things like that. So where does the solution go then? I mean, me as a citizen, let's say, as an architect at second as well, I do have a perspective of what at least a resilient structure would look like, whether in terms of material, whether in terms of structural system, whether in terms of an urban context where it sits, the ecological system that it is built around. Ama, how can I even go bigger than that?
Okay, I mean, so I will turn to, you know, this concept of assemblage here. I mean, you know, I'm trying, you know, of course, this is an hour, you know, really exercise, you know, to make. I mean, you know, I just focused on the question of complexity, and the, you know, complexity involves, you know, for instance, in this figure, quite a few, you know, actors and levels. Okay, but let's think that, you know, this is not a, you know, organic, you know, type of unity. I mean, this is sets of assemblages, actually. I mean, even when we don't do that, people at the district level doing something or getting prepared. I mean, certain civil society-based institutions, associations, etc., already providing, you know, training and other, you know, things. For instance, there is this MAG, Mahalle Gönüllüleri, in Cihangir and in other areas. They are already at work without the municipal involvement. So that is some sort of assemblage at work. Okay, so I mean, here what we try to do, you know, to make it more systematic. You know, in that sense, I mean, many of them, without the, you know, these kind of charts, these kind of things, they are already working. Okay, for this reason, even if we can't work, you know, in such a systematic way. So when we look at this, you know, diagram, I see many, you know, really assemblages still at work and, you know, doing something. So in that sense, you know, we don't have to, you know, bring all these people and institutions and levels together. If we can, this is the most systematic way, in the way we see it. But then, on the other hand, without doing that, for instance, chambers of architects, itself like an assemblage working at the moment, or chambers of architects and geological engineers. I mean, I'm just gonna next week talk in their conference on the resilient cities, and then next week in the architects meeting, taking place in the very same on the very same issue. So that means actually, when we look at this complex diagram, actually each items there still without such coordination, they are doing their work on it. But the point is this: if we bring them together, if these assemblages could be convinced to form a broader assemblage, a more comprehensive, multi-layered, multi-leveled, multi-scaled, then maybe we can meet this challenge of the earthquake in a better way. So for this reason, I'm not really proposing you to just build such a comprehensive and well-organized framework. Before that, we already work with these small assemblages, for doing something. So then, at the neighborhood level, for instance, what we are now bargaining with the different, branches of the municipality to enable these local, units rather than control them. So that, for instance, this sub-district citizens' assemblies could be established to coordinate various agencies at the neighborhood and district level to work together. So rather than, here, my proposal is not just create a huge, assemblage. This is some sort of idealized situation. But you can work at any corner of this assemblage by taking it as an assemblage. I can show you, for instance, district municipalities themselves, for instance, Beyoğlu municipality, whether you like it or not, or they have their own, resilience program for their district. Whether it will work or not, it's a different issue, but they have, meetings, they have, really some trainings, they meet with the people, etc. So they don't stop. So for this reason, if I'm right, what I understand from your comment is that, can we do anything without really creating such a huge, framework? Yes, we can. Already we are doing, and in some parts, people pushing their, local, resources, etc. University is also doing their best. This is an assemblage, what we are doing here. So we come together around, some sort of topic, which also includes some resilience. So you have some sort of coordination scheme, you have a computer system, you have some sort of, target, and then evaluation schemes, etc. Even the design. You are nicely, now, moderating this meeting. So the professors, a little bit at the background, ready to intervene if there will be, need for them. But that's nicely done framework. It's assemblage, and you are doing your contribution to this process. But I am asking that, if universities could be better placed. Because I'm not quite sure if we use the potentials of the universities in the best way as the local authority or as the central government. So for this reason, I just, work with my friends to propose the universities as quasi-local government authorities. Of course, this requires a lot of working. For instance, decision-making bodies of the university should be elected, etc. So to occupy such a position in, let's say, 2040 or 25 or 35. at some point, I mean, I would like to see the universities, not such relaxed institutions, doing whatever,
Definitely.
I mean, they have to take more responsibility with more resources and more power, of course. Because this, in such a country like Turkey, I mean, this is some sort of, luxury. I mean, to keep the universities like that, in a partial inertia, some sort of passivity. So such a huge knowledge, such a young, really potential students and lecturers, etc. They should be, within the corridors of power, but focusing on the city itself rather than, politics as such. So, I mean,
Definitely, yeah.
that's also some sort of a new assemblage, So I propose some form of deterritorialization and reterritorialization by also writing the codes of the, really assemblage once again. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Especially this university part, I think it's such an importance for us as, let's say, upcoming leaders, hopefully, to integrate the young generation, the young population, the teenagers, the students, whoever is still at the bottom of the line, into understanding, being part of it, and actually learning how to avoid it or live with it in case of, let's say, crisis, or how we can adapt to these outcomes that might happen in the future. That's a really important one.
Yeah, let me add something. I mean, especially, for Bilgi University. You are from Bilgi University. So,
yes, we are.
Yeah, I mean, think of the, establishment of the university in a very specific part of the city, and then the impact it created in the surrounding environment. I mean, the professor of that time, Gülten Kazgan, I suppose, they run some sort of research on the young population of the surrounding areas, etc. So that's what I'm talking about. To be sensitive to its environment, citywide and, in the place where located, I mean, in the surrounding areas. I mean, a lot of problems, accumulate around the university and they just watch. I mean, I'm not accusing the universities because this is the framework. So, I mean, especially for Bilgi, I mean, as a recent case, I mean, with its surrounding area, the interaction, especially in its initial stage, was huge in terms of the transformation, the area undergone, and then the concerns of the university administration and the professors and lecturers in the university, the way in which they paid attention to those, problems. So maybe, that's some sort of example to take while we, really defend some form of university-city relationship in a new framework. Okay.
If I may add also some sort of a short comment that could turn into a question perhaps as well. But we talked about actors and, active actors, or we need to educate people, but also have them as an actor, contributor. And at the same time, we talked about, universities as an institute for educating, general public people, students, etc. And what I'm kind of curious about is the amount of interaction, or in terms of relating the actors to the actual problem. So within university, especially because it's an environment of learning, usually within at least the undergraduate programs, we tend to have a more hypothetical, issues, because it's in a learning environment, not dealing necessarily with the real problem. Because, some students come with different backgrounds, some students come from different countries. For example, in case of Bilgi, we have a lot of international students.
Yeah.
So also their culture, I've noticed this, their culture, their background reflects heavily on their education as well, or on their contribution as well, so to speak. For example, students sometimes from a different country to a different country, they have this sort of fear of actually contributing because of their higher education. You mean high school, middle school, etc. Prevented them this kind of like industrialized kind of education system where you sit in a line and just learn and then listen to your instructor. You got other people who are interactive. They would like to share, discuss the issue with you, find the clubs to actually participate in, and then put their hands on. So the question is, how transparent should we be with the students, with the actors, and the government? Correlating them together, putting them together, whether it's actually an effective way of learning, not only participating in solving the issue, but actually does it, participate in their education in a positive way.
Okay, I mean, that's a very difficult question in the sense that it is a very heterogeneous situation you are referring to. I mean, even when you talk about students themselves, as you mentioned yourself, they are not really a homogeneous group as students. So for this reason, I'm not quite sure if there is one single, really solution or framework to propose how you really integrate the students into, for instance, learning process. So I think, rather, this learning process itself is quite important in the sense that, for instance, the way in which now you carry out this, class or program or seminars, I think quite what I saw within the 1 hour or so. I mean, it is open to different cultural environments. For instance, I saw the other professors who made presentation here. They were from different countries with different orientations and focusing on different problems. So, and also, providing a forum for the students after these presentations. Also some form of, kind of, democratic environment which allows the different cultures to handle the situation differently. For instance, you may, just watch it. So you talk a lot. I'm quite sure you come from an environment, already comfortable for this kind of contributions, making statements, etc. So that's a kind of habitus, point of view. I mean, yeah. So in that sense, I mean that could be repressive for some students, but not necessarily. So if, for instance, we arrange this class or this seminar to force everybody to say something about this, it would be repressive. So I think this heterogeneity of this, seminar is quite, I mean, impressive in various sense. It is a hugely democratic environment in certain respects. I'm sure, there are other aspects. I mean, you are not consulted, and then I'm doing the same because somehow, you have to come to a point quickly. You have 3 months or so, etc. So then you make decisions without that much consultation. But then, creating such a seminar environment is a very, impressive way of creating a, some sort of democratic, participatory and non-participatory environment for the students. So I don't know. I mean, in the middle of all these, quite, a bit non-democratic environment, creating democratic, micro publics or mini publics is not that easy to, carry out. So for this reason, there are limits to democracy, especially in the local environments. But I'm quite impressed with the, really seminar here, what I'm, really experiencing. So, but there will be always some silent people. It will take time for them. Maybe that time will never come to talk for them because they come from a very different environment. So unfortunately, life is not that long and rich to allow everybody at some point, to, find a suitable avenue for participation. But then, doing, better, doing, your best is quite important. And I'm not just saying for the sake of saying, but it's, such an environment is one of the examples. I'm sure you are doing your best to create such, a nice participatory environment.
Thank you very much. We got a question in the chat from Ragad Al-Jazairi. Would you like to read it, or would you like to say it, Ragad?
Abdullah, maybe you should
Actually,
read out loud.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm on the way. I'm on the way, so it's difficult for me to.
All right. I'll read it for you. So Ragad says,
I'm reading this in terms of crisis response. To which degree does the using contemporary solution hold importance in the design, redesign of effect areas? Does the weakness of options become the dominant in the situation? Also, dire situation is long-term thinking part of the discussion in finding solutions. Yeah, I mean, the one of the thing I'm really feeling a little bit down is the these low-income areas where the buildings are really very poor, and we know that they can't really resist or stand firmly against such earthquakes, especially after 6, if it is 7. So I mean, I can't imagine the type of damage in such areas, and the loss of lives, etc., would be the degree and level. So it's really here in such areas, we have a huge problem because people don't have that kind of resource to mobilize, to move to another place, or buy a new house, or contribute to the redevelopment and regeneration, or whatever process, or strengthening process. So that's the really point. Actually, you should measure your success and failure. I mean, doing certain things in certain areas are not that difficult. They are important, but the point is this. I mean, 60,000 buildings are prone to demolition. And I'm not talking about housing units, the buildings. So in some of them there are 20, 30 housing units in one building. So that's the I mean, one of the specific problem, this really low income group areas, and they are the really there is some sort of dialectic here, in the sense that these buildings are really, standards are quite low because they are owned or rented by low income groups, and they are the really most vulnerable. So what are you gonna do with these buildings? I mean, are we gonna really counting this population a surplus population? So this is what reality really in a way tells us. I mean, if you don't do anything, I mean, making some sort of nostalgic, or not nostalgic, but just, I mean, romantic, comments about them is just really some sort of, unacceptable, behavior. I mean, this is the surplus population of the city at the moment. So, I mean, I think, the most important area of cooperation between central and local government and other forces, including the international finance, the cooperation should be established in the very same, this point. Housing schemes towards these people, the low-income groups. I mean, otherwise, I don't see some sort of resilient city, whatever you do in the rest of those areas, logistic and health, etc. So they're just they don't tell me that much about the really success of resilient city project. The real success is the this surplus population, what you do about that surplus population and surplus areas. So that means when I say surplus, we are ready to get rid of them by doing nothing. So whether local government, whether central government, or any other, institution, it doesn't matter, but all of them are responsible from that situation. And so this is something, we can't leave it as some sort of long-term, thinking or solution towards these, things. I mean, they have to be priority, because that's the actual damage in terms of human cost will be received in an earthquake. So, I mean, by saying that, I'm not solving the problem. I'm just, openly calling the, all sides that, really, actually by doing nothing, they create a surplus, city and surplus population. So that's an accusation.
Okay, yes. Thank you so much for your response. It really helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Abdullah, if there are no other questions, may I?
Yes, Hocam.
question?
No other questions in the chat. You were thank
Okay.
of course.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thanks a lot, really. It was a very, enlightening, let me say, presentation for us all. However, I have a question in my mind still, both considering your, both hats of, let me say, city and regional planning and political science and public administration expertise, let me say.
Actually, my PhD is in sociology.
Sociology, yeah, also the sociology.
Three, different areas, but focusing on the city,
Yes, this is which I also would like to emphasize too, because the presentation was mostly about getting a bit more prepared for certain earthquake conditions beforehand to be more resilient. But after living through such a disaster situation, I remember reading one of your, let me say, just thoughts and kind of perspectives on after living such huge disasters. It also helps us to rethink our, habits of living together, or our habits of, building our cities or social structures, or, habits of perhaps developing our economical, approaches or practices, or whatever we may name it. You were saying that this is also another perhaps kind of, I'm going to use the word, opportunity for all of us to rethink all these very deeply rooted habits at the same time, and try to develop more alternative ways of, structuring both the societies, rethinking cities, or, relating ourselves to geographies, lands, and many other aspects that we accept as kind of, preset at the moment. So I really would love to hear more about that part of your ideas and opinions, because that was really inspiring for me, to stop and rethink for a moment. So yeah, such a really huge disaster happened, but how we may have some progress through that by developing some alternative ways of living together, building our communities, building our economical habits, and the other stuff too. So is there any chance to hear from you in person, since we catch you like that?
Yeah, I mean, let me, focus on this, district level to answer this question. I mean, we have been dealing with this question of participation for ages now. So I met Ilhan Tekeli last week. We sat 2 hours, and then we discussed our own, both perspectives, on this participation, especially focusing on Istanbul. So he has been working on that, issue, citizens assemblies, all other participatory forms, etc. From my own perspective, I have been, really working on this problem, etc. But it's a very, really teleological and somehow, romantic, really idea of, idea to create a more participatory, environment at the local level, because we are projecting something. We try to, impose our own categories on the local population. So we want them, like a revolutionary, left-wing revolutionary, trying to emancipate the society. So we try to emancipate the neighborhoods. We create participatory, really local environment, neighborhoods, districts, or assemblies, etc. But, what would be the real, motive, which will change this insensitivity to participation? Because we know that it's not, there are certain participatory, really ways of doing things, but they are not really type of participation we would like to see. Either clientelistic type of participation or, some sort of, interest group participation, etc. So we would like to have a more pluralistic form, okay? But then it doesn't happen for years. So what's our expectation? What would happen so that, that attitude would change? For instance, local authorities doesn't allow the people to air their views. Councillors doesn't want to share their, really power. Or mayors would like to, make some sort of, good for their citizens without that much getting their involvement. I mean, they want to just heroically solve their problems. So, but what is actually going to make this, situation change? What is the tipping point? So here, when I say, earthquake could be a tipping point where we could stop, because we lost 50,000 people, okay? And another 20,000 in the previous earthquake, and then we are expecting another one, etc. So when we were discussing in the Istanbul Planning Agency on this very same, semtleştirme project. So my idea, honestly, was this: look, let's push this, situation and create a tipping point by bringing this earthquake, preparedness as a central issue. I mean, when I, ask people, let's create a participatory, really assembly in this district, this is nonsense. But this time, we are going with the earthquake preparedness. So my expectation or wishful thinking has been that, this is a very sensitive issue. Everybody now feel obliged to do something. And then at this environment, I'm talking to the, both in the municipality and in other institutions, whether they would like to come together at the local level with the local people to allow them to create their own, platforms to get to become resilient, to, talk about their problems, to get trained on certain issues, etc. Because this is an issue, we realize that, really, if we don't do it right, it will be too costly. So there is some sort of legitimacy for participation here. An abstract participatory, proposal always, destined to fail. But here we have a very concrete problem. Are we gonna prepare the neighborhoods to the earthquake or not? So are we gonna do it by sending 2-3 people and give training to people and come back? Or we go there, we provide the people with the, platforms, and then, contribute their, training process, but then keep that platforms there intact. to become as some sort of nest and network for the local people to continuously, use those platforms to get prepared for, just not simply for earthquake, but in the face of poverty, in the face of food, really shortages, in the face of, water, shortages, etc. So because we are going towards a world, in a direction where the, really permanent crisis situation in different fronts gonna hit the metropolis. So are we gonna create resilient communities by using this now chance of earthquake? Because I think that's a very legitimate point of entry, because we know that if people is not going to be prepared, trained, etc., our loss will be much higher. So I'm talking to the head of the, really this muhtarlar dairesi. Look, can we work together? So in these neighborhoods, let's not make it, 1,000 neighborhoods, but 100 districts. So then we create these platforms, but then, these are the assemblages. Let's not really create hierarchies. So let's leave some space for them to come together after us or with us. We come and go back, etc. But then we can create some sort of self-management systems there for the neighborhoods, not for politics, not for anything, just to create some form of social, economic, and geological resilience as well. So that's a kind of, negotiation process. I should tell you, we meet resistance as well. Some people, still telling that, so how are we going to control it in the end if you go out of hand? So let it go out of hand. I mean, everybody goes out of hand. Government goes out of hand. Constitutional court even, is now, really, we don't know where, it sits in this system. So, I mean, let the local communities a little bit make their exercise, learn how to do with our contribution. So best thing you do to create community centers, build a, small, community center there as a gift, if you can. But then don't, run that community center, leave it to the community. But then we have a good, excuse for that. They are getting prepared for the earthquake. Earthquake which could, kill, maybe thousands of people in a few minutes. So that's some sort of, entry point. I think, a more serious entry point, because we have a huge legitimacy to claim that, communities need some space for themselves to get prepared. So, I mean, it's a very controversial and difficult issue. I see that, but we have to push further, and then we have to look at for instance, if you look at Istanbul, Cihangir, for instance, is doing its own training, but Cihangir is a upper middle class income area. I mean, they have resourceful, etc. So, but rather than really saying that, I'm ready to go there to see their experiences. So how they achieve, as a success example, if they are successful. And in Kadıköy, they are doing something at the district level, some sort of community-based training, etc. So, but we don't see it in Ok Meydanı or Sultanbeyli. I mean, let me tell you, in certain conservative areas, for instance, when people go for this MAG group, Mahalle Gönüllüleri, when they go to these conservative areas, for instance, they told the story that actually they couldn't give training to male and female members of the local community in the very same space. They, just demanded separate, training. So, okay, if I have to, I have to, I have to recognize that, really local culture, as some of you said that, you know, coming from different communities, traditions, etc. So if those people are conservative, if the women and men would like to have, you know, separate training programs, so you have to respect that. So you have to organize the local community or help them to organize the local community by paying attention to that. Otherwise, they will refuse all these, you know, schemes. I'm not saying from my own cultural point of view, it's the best solution, but it's a solution. So in that respect, you know, you have to, you know, listen to the local communities, their local, you know, specificities, etc., etc. I mean, of course, if there is violence, that's a different issue. But here, you know, they ask different, you know, arrangements for different, you know, really gender groups. So, I mean, if we will look at these different communities in different socioeconomic groups, etc. But the point is this, as you underline, and thanks reading the article or evaluation I made, you know, this opinions I, you know, in terms of, you know, this, I mean, if earthquake is an event, we will change our behavior. If it's not an event, we will continue as we do. I mean, you know, just a few weeks, we will act as if we are changing, and then we keep doing what we have been doing. That's not an event. I mean, so can we turn this earthquake as an event? We change our behavior. That was my, you know, query, my, you know, really demand. And one of the, you know, area I would like to see that is the community level, because that needs some sort of rethinking and acting differently, different form of deterritorialization and reterritorialization and recoding is required. Where it is required is the community level, you know, urgently, I think. I hope I just, you know.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very nice. Thank you so much.
We don't have any other questions, I believe. Banu Hoca, do you have anything you would like to say as well?
And hi to İlhan Tekeli too. Sorry, I think I'm also from Middle East Technical University.
I know you. I mean,
yeah.
Know you from the Mimarlık Fakültesi.
Yes. Yeah.
Canteen scenes.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you all. I mean, I thank you very much, really, for inviting me to this beautiful, you know, beautifully arranged environment, also participatory environment. So I would like to at some point see you in Istanbul Planning Agency. Maybe, you know, we can meet there at some point. I mean, you know, I will contact you. So I have your contacts, numbers, etc. So to invite you to planning agency, you know, after
that would be wonderful.
You know.
That would be really wonderful. Yeah. We will be very happy.
It's IPA campus, right? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, IPA.
Yeah.
I've been working with them. Then today, very nicely. I mean, you know, I just, you know, I've been in Ankara. I just had some sort of very busy time in Ankara and some sort of, you know, a small health problem with my sinuses, etc. So I haven't been there. But yesterday there was a international meeting, and then there were experts from United States and from the New York City Transportation Department. And this woman, I mean, at some point in her presentation stopped and then, you know, saluted the, you know, really team working on vision action plan. And the exact word, what she said for the action plan, I coordinate. I really felt happy for such an evaluation. She said, you know, look, I analyzed all these things, and then this is like some sort of so-called Kutup Yıldızı, north, you know, things to follow, you know, for all of us. And then she was quite happy with the action plan's logic. So all these, you know, some parts. So I would like our team to present you with this, you know, action plan framework at some point, if we can, arrange a right time. So to share with you, maybe working certain things together in the future, because I want to see the universities more in the campus, not only make presentation, but as some sort of participant, and some sort of partner in a way. So we can talk about that. So
Thank you.
Şebnem, let me know the, your detail,
Okay, I will. I will send you. Mhm.
contact you. We can talk about,
Mhm.
some form of cooperation.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Yes,
Tarık
well,
Hocam.
I'm
Thank you
leaving.
very much for this mind-opening presentation and really your answers to questions. Thank you very much for your
I
time.
thank you, Banu Hoca. I thank you. It's the same. I mean, we would like to see you in IPA campus at some point, not in the
Yeah.
long term. I will just contact you as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much for that also.
Okay. See you.
Abdullah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We can close, Abdullah, if you like.
Yes, hocam. Thank you all. I will stop the recording right now as well.